Welcome back. We're talking to Boy George in our London studio. Let's talk now about this remarkable success of your new hit record, Everything I Own. Despite the recent troubles you've come up with the success, it must be extremely pleasing for you.
The most enjoyable thing about the success of the record in England was that, you know, before the record came out, you know, there was no Fleet Street press, you know, and it was a relief to see that records could actually sell without scandal, you know, and while my record was being released, they would pick on an Elton John, you know, and I mean, I felt very sorry for Elton, you know, I feel sorry for anybody who has to go through that, but the main thing is that, you know, I spent a lot of my career making people happy, and for a long time I made a lot of people unhappy, and I'm really pleased to be able to give something, you know, and music is what I do.
What would it have meant for you? I'm sorry, what would it have meant for you had you done this record as quickly as you did it after the drug problem, and then had it failed, had it not been a success?
I'd have got myself a snazzier hat.
But did you know that you were risking things, Boy George? I mean, did you know the risk involved in doing a record so quickly, that this could be the final kick in the stomach for you, if it didn't work?
I knew that there was a risk involved, but, you know, when I'd walk along the street, taxi drivers would honk their horns and wave at me, you know, and I had a lot of public support. You know, all the greatest stars in England, if you take, for example, Joan Collins, they buzz off and go somewhere else, you know, because they get tired of being kicked in the teeth. And one thing that you forget, long before my drug problem, The Sun were writing stories about me being a fat pig, you know, about my sex life. So it didn't just start with drugs. It started a long, long time ago. They were slagging off Culture Club. They were saying we were useless, that we didn't contribute anything. So really, you know, this is not something new. But, you know, I knew that I had a certain talent. You know, I can sing.
What is that talent? You're being terribly frank anyway, so what is the talent? What do you have?
I have wit.
No question.
You know, I have a sense of humour, and I can sing a bit.
What about Ferry Aid? Having done, you did a record, again taking the risk there. There was obviously no need for you to get involved with Ferry Aid to raise that money for the families of the victims. Why did you do that?
Well, I think, you know, when everybody was doing Band Aid, everyone was saying, well, you know, why don't we do something for people at home? And, you know, when the ferry disaster first happened, it really didn't seem as bad as it does now. And as the days went on, it became, you know, worse. And the thing that made me do it, I mean, for a start, you know, I mean, I didn't do it for the Sun newspaper. You know, I did it purely to help the families of the people that had lost children, husbands, wives. I think the tragedy was probably one of the worst things since the Titanic, you know, and even now, you know, with the news stories about the ship being pulled up, it's getting worse, you know, and it's getting more depressing. And so really, you know, I didn't need any sort of poke in the back to do it. You know, I jumped at the chance of doing it.
How much do you think it will raise?
I'm not sure, but I hope a lot of money, and I hope, you know, you see, the great thing about, I mean, actually the person to thank for all this is Bob Geldof, because, you know, he's really set an example. He's shut, you see, you know, people, you know, you can give to charity, but when you make a record, you're giving something to people, and they know that they've contributed. So they have their Ferry Aid single or their Band Aid single, and they know that by buying that record, which they can keep, they've done something constructive.
Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
I think if you can, you know, lend yourself to a good cause, then I think you should do it. I would like in the future to sort of try and lend my support to sort of, you know, anti-drug campaigns, you know, because speaking from experience, you know, I mean, I couldn't tell you what it's like to have a child, you know, I don't know what it's like to have a period, but I can tell you what it's like to be a drug addict, you know, so I could lend my help to people who have problems.
Tell us about the royal handshake the other day. We read the story again with Princess Diana, where you backed away from shaking hands with her, or at least the word from Buckingham Palace was that she wasn't interested, and then she went out of her way to shake hands.
No, what happened was she asked if she could meet me, and I went upstairs to where she was, and a Buckingham Palace official said, "Get out of the line, peasant." And I was, quite happy to do that, being a peasant at heart. And I stood to one side, looking very colourful, making sure I was noticed. And the princess came up and shook my hand and spoke to me about my clothes, spoke to me about the Ferry Aid record. And, all this, I'm sure in Australia there was plenty of stories that, she didn't want to meet me, but she did want to meet me.
Did she ask where you get your hats?
No, I asked if I should take it off because I'm not really I haven't got that many manners. So I wondered whether I should take my hat off, and she said, "No, leave it on. It's gorgeous, darling."
I know an album's coming up, or at least you plan an album. What about a tour of Australia? Is that planned?
Well, actually, Australian promoters were the first people to offer me a tour this year, during all the trouble. And the last time I was in Australia, I had a fantastic time. I really enjoyed myself. I really want to come back, and I hope towards the end of the year I can do that. My album comes out in June. It's called Sold, and I will be coming back to Australia. Whether it's this year, I'm not sure, but I hope it is. You
jokingly said as well it's one of the few countries in the world that'll let you in these days.
Yeah.
All right.
All criminals together.
We thank you for your time. It's good to see you looking well, and it's nice to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. All criminals together, eh? Boy George in London. Thank you for that. And now a message